Columnist Mike Sielski joins me here on the Sports Bash from the Inquirer, Philly.com. Hey, Mike, so how does Brogdon get the hardware, man?
I think a couple things were at play, Mike. I think, number one, I think there were a lot of voters who probably felt that either Saric or Embiid should be the Rookie of the Year, and it kind of ended up, splitting the vote to a certain extent. If only one of them had been eligible, you'd have voted for one, and that player would have been able to collect more votes. I also think I'm willing to bet, based on people I know who cover the league and the general tenor of the way people within the league have felt about the Sixers. I'm willing to bet there were people who were just kind of happy to see Brogdon win, and felt like because the Bucks were a respectable team and didn't go through the process and didn't tank, that that either A, they were voters and weren't going to vote for either Embiid or Saric, or we're just kind of happy to see that Brogdon won.
So this is a kind of a way of saying we are happy that the Sixers players are not being rewarded for their efforts the last 3 seasons.
Yeah, I'm not saying there's a conspiracy or, collusion or anything like that. I'm just saying that there's still a healthy anti-process sentiment around the NBA, both within the league office and among owners, because let's face it, the owners, reportedly lobbied the league to do something about the Sixers tanking, and that's how we ended up with Jerry Colangelo overseeing things for a while there. This is something kind of, in a way, I think people were kind of saying, okay, this is good. We don't want to, it's good not to see those Sixers rewarded for doing what they did.
Mike Sielski is with us. I wrote about this about a week ago, that the Sixers were, in essence, a team that is being kind of persecuted for wanting to get off the middle rung of the ladder here. The NBA kind of almost gives credence to mediocrity. The league almost wants everybody to be mediocre. Doesn't that seem like the way it is?
Well, I think what the league wants is entertainment on a nightly basis. And to that end, I think they prefer teams that are bad but that try to be good, and they're just really bad at trying to be good, as opposed to what the Sixers did, which is pretty much trying to be bad. I think the steps that a team in the NBA often has to take to establish or maintain excellence are at odds with what the league is increasingly becoming, which is a showcase for its stars. You watched that show the awards show the other night, and you watch the way the league is covered and discussed on TV and in talk radio and in social media, and it's all about, are Russ and KD getting along, and who's having a war of words with the media now, and who would be better, LeBron or Steph or Durant, or whatever the case may be. It's very star-driven. It's very kind of soap opera-esque in that regard. And what holds it all together is the idea that every night you're going to see this show where two teams with their stars go at it. And the Sixers, with their plan, kind of rejected that out of hand and said, well, we're not going to take part in all that because it doesn't help us, given the condition we're in as of 2013. It's not going to help us get any closer to winning a championship. And we want to win a championship. So that's why Sam Hinkie did what he did, without the guarantee that it was going to result in a championship, just that being the goal and that being the way to do it, if you get fortunate and make some good decisions. So I do think there's some backlash.
Yeah, it seems that, the league is in a very interesting state of flux right now, where if you are – the two teams that get criticized are the super team. Everybody criticizes the super team, that they take the easy way out and it's not fun for the league, and the tanking team. The teams in the middle almost seem to get a pass here. And today you see the Houston Rockets, a team that won 50-plus games, had the second, Harden was second in the MVP voting 2 straight years, and they have basically said, we are not good enough, and maybe Chris Paul's not the best fit, but you know what? He's a star, and that might attract another star, and this is us trying to get off the middle rung.
Yeah, I think that's what's happening around the league. I mean, look, the league has always been super team-driven. I mean, go back to the Celtics teams of the 50s and 60s. Go back to the Lakers and Celtics teams and the Sixers teams of the early 1980s, the Bulls teams of the 90s. It's just basically one dynasty after another, with 2 or 3 teams kind of dominating the league in varying eras. So I don't know that this is that different from what's going on in the past. I think the difference is, that more and more teams are figuring out that it's less productive for them to try to be kind of middling competitive, what the Sixers were in the mid-2000s when they had Andre Iguodala and Andre Miller and Lou Williams and Elton Brand and guys like that, than it is to bottom out and hope that guys like Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons and Markelle Fultz become mega superstars, and then you have them, and then you can try to build a great team around them.
Right, Mike. I mean, the theory of basically trying to do it, quote unquote, the right way, it seemingly is getting you nowhere in today's game. I mean, so you have to do something different, a la be able to attract a couple of friends or have the means of acquiring guys that are good enough that will attract said friends.
Or you have to get very lucky. You have to get, you have to beat the Milwaukee Bucks, who had, the Greek Freak drop to them with the number 15th pick of the 2013 draft, and then be really bad and get Jabari Parker, and then, steal Brogdon in the second round of last year's draft when you're, who pays attention to the second round of the draft. You can, but that's, in a way, it's almost like, you can do that, but in a way it's the equivalent of like standing out in a storm and holding up a metal rod and hoping you get hit by a bolt of lightning. The Pacers had something similar happen like that a few years ago when they drafted Paul George, 17th, I think it was. Maybe it was 10th or wherever they took George. It wasn't at a spot where you say, oh, they get a bona fide superstar there every time. They in a way kind of lucked out and got a terrific player and were able to build around him for a little while, but even that only lasted for, a couple of seasons where they were bona fide challengers to the Miami Heat in the Eastern Conference. So, you can take that chance if you want, and a lot of people will argue that that's the more dignified way to do it. But the fact is, the way the system is set up now, it incentivizes teams to do what the Sixers did.
Yeah.
Because the best way to get cheap stars is when they enter the league, and that's by drafting them.
Yeah, it almost seems, Mike, that the league endorses mediocrity, and now the teams are kind of almost, some teams anyway, are siding with the Sixers. They're almost saying, you know what, maybe this isn't a bad idea, where the league is trying to encourage you to stay in the middle.
Well, the league wants entertainment, right, more than anything else. And if you have a bunch of teams in the middle,
it gives every fan base the idea of we can catch.
Yeah.
The 2001 Sixers are the poster child. They caught lightning in a bottle, and then after that were mediocre for, 10, 15 years?
Exactly. That's it. And that's great, and we all remember that season and how wonderful it was. But that is the pure anomaly. That is the out of nowhere, everything comes together this one time. And if you think about it, as great as that run was, were the Sixers going into that finals, and we all remember Iverson stepping over Tyrone Lue and all that stuff. In retrospect, and even in the moment, did anybody really think they had a realistic chance against the Lakers? They didn't.
Right.
They might have lost to the Sacramento Kings had the Kings made the finals that year. I mean, it was an out-of-nowhere kind of thing, and they were overmatched once they got to the finals. Go look at those last four games. So, again, you can see what you want to see out of different runs at different times, but the fact of the matter is that the league is set up that if you have 3 or 4 superstar players, you're going to be able to compete for a championship. Otherwise, your goal should be to get 3 or 4 star players to compete for a championship.
Yeah, the league preys on that too. Like that story, that 2001 team is like the league says you have that shot. You can catch lightning in the bottle. Look at this team here. And I think that's where this whole theory of if you just get into the playoffs, but in the NBA, statistically speaking, unless you're the number 1 or number 2 seed, you ain't winning the championship.
No, you're not. And that brings us back to the Sixers. The Sixers kind of blew up that whole idea. And as one of the points I made in the column, for instance, was that, if you remember a few years ago, David Stern would go after the Spurs, and particularly Greg Popovich, for, resting Tim Duncan and Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili. And the reason he would go after Popovich was because Stern's belief, and I would argue the NBA maintains this position to this day, is that, well, it's supposed to be entertainment, and we don't want our best players sitting. Well, Popovich's feeling was, if I want to win a championship, I want those 3 guys at their freshest and healthiest when the games matter most. And the same sort of logic applies to what the Sixers have done. The Sixers said, we are not going to play this game. We're not going to keep up appearances just for the sake of winning 30 to 40 games and being mediocre and putting out a competent product every night, because it's not going to get us any closer to winning a championship. There's no chance. There's virtually no chance we'll end up winning a championship that way. So we reject the idea, the image of the league out of hand. We're going to build this thing back up from scratch. And within a few years, hopefully we'll be in a position to compete for a championship. It remains to be seen if they'll get there, but it looks okay right now.
And a lot of it is, Mike, I think, this perception of what they were trying to accomplish or what this thing whole was the most chance being a contender for an elongated period of time, not just being a 42-win team and then one time being a 52-win team making that run. They wanted consistent success for the most cracks at being a contender. I mean, is that how the vision of this all was 10 to 15 years of competitiveness?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they didn't want to be the Toronto Raptors, where even if you get to the Eastern Conference Finals like the Raptors did last year, you know that they really don't have much of a chance against LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Love in Cleveland. The Sixers, Hinkie was aiming for something bigger than that. He wanted, Embiid and a bunch of other players to come in and to be that team that everybody else was shooting to match. And I applaud him for that goal. I do. Now, people differ about that. I've had discussions with people who say, it's an entertainment business first and foremost, and you have an obligation to give your fans something to watch that's decent on a night-to-night basis. And watching, a team lose its first 18 games in the 2015-2016 season is an abdication of that responsibility, and I understand that argument. But it's also a fact the Sixers haven't won a championship since 1983. And when they won it that year, they had a whole bunch of stars, from Moses Malone to Julius Erving to Mo Cheeks to Andrew Toney. They were pretty great. And, I'm not going to fault Sam Hinkie or Brian Colangelo or anybody who has been a decision maker with the Sixers,
right,
for trying to get back to that level again.
And nor am I. But how about Adam Silver? Has he now come into terms with the fact that he's got a problem?
Well, he spoke with Dan Patrick on NBC the other day and sounded like he did. That, Patrick kind of asked him kind of a leading, dismissive question about the Sixers and the process, and it was, a way to dress up, the term itself was just a dressed-up way of saying a team's trying to lose games. But, Silver's response suggested that, the league is going to take a long look at the lottery and see what they can do to really de-incentivize teams from doing this, from, trying to lose games so that they can get great players in the draft and get the highest draft picks possible so they can get a player in the draft. I'm not sure what the answer is, but if Adam Silver is serious about that, I applaud him for it, and you can't tell me that what the Sixers have done didn't play a role in his reevaluating that.
I would agree. Read the piece at Philly.com, Mike Sielski. It's a really interesting article. And by the way, if you wanted to make another argument for Saric, the Sixers, he helped them win 18 more games in the year before. The Bucks only won 9 extra games from one year to the next. So you throw that into the mix as well. Mike, good piece, man. I appreciate you talking about it with us.
Anytime, Mike. Thank you.